welcome to Out of the Box Radio with me, your host, Christine Blasdale. Out of the Box Radio is a weekly podcast of audible ear candy dedicated to bringing a fresh perspective on this thing that we call life. And each and every week, we're going to be diving into the topics that matter most with lively conversations on issues such as health, wellness, and transformational healing, all with the goal of creating a better world and becoming a happier human being. I will be your tour guide for this epic adventure, and each and every week we're going to be embarking on a journey with the ultimate goal being transformation to our highest potential. And now, let's get out of the box. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Out of the Box Radio. I am your host, Christine Blasdale, and I am really excited that you tuned in today because today's program is going to be an eye-opener for you. And not just if you're over 50, but if you're someone who's approaching 50, if you're someone in your 30s, this is something that you're really going to be enjoying. My guest today is Dr. Andrea Brandt. She's a world-renowned psychotherapist of over 35 years and author of Mindful Aging, Embracing Your Life After 50 to Find Fulfillment, Purpose, and Joy. And Dr. Andrea Brandt joins us today from Santa Monica. Dr. Andrea Brandt, thank you so much for joining KPFK listeners and exploring this really topical issue. I love the subject matter. Thank you so much.
Well, it's my pleasure, and thank you for inviting me, Christine.
So let's talk about, I myself am a person over 50, and as I was saying to you earlier, I have quite a few friends who are also 50 plus, and I noticed that we're all kind of going through this very unique transformation, so to speak. Some, especially with women, are post-menopausal and going through some changes hormonally. But what I'm also seeing is that there's a resurgence of creativity and energy and determination that I mean, for me, I actually surprise myself in some respects. But let's talk about mindful aging in this world of, focusing in so much on youth. Our culture focuses on youth so much. Let's talk about this book. What led you to write this book?
Well, I came from a family where they were productive and they were concerned with style and how they looked and how they functioned and everything well into their 90s. And so, and they would deny. I mean, my grandmother got cremated so her age wouldn't be on some headstone someplace. She was really into aging and functioning and being productive, and I mean, she divorced a second time at the age of 92.
Oh, bless her.
Bless her, right. And I said to her, Grandma, isn't that a little crazy? And she said to me, honey, he's just a little too sick for me.
Wow.
He was ailing.
Yeah.
And at first I thought, wow, that's kind of nasty. That's not very sensitive. And then as I saw who she was, I realized she got 6 more meaningful years out of her life, because she lived to 98. And she was helping others and she was involved and engaged. And that was very important to her. And so, not that they didn't have their difficulties in life, and not that I haven't had mine, and not that I haven't been depressed in my life, but it hasn't been about getting older. It's been more, situation specific when I've been depressed. I feel very vital and relevant and enjoy being creative and doing things from a mindful perspective. And so I don't think about age unless, someone makes a point of it or something, like my birthday. And then I think about it.
Well, I've interviewed before Dr. Mario Martinez, who is a world-renowned neuropsychologist, and he studied centenarians, people who were 100 years old and older, and found throughout his research, and he interviewed quite a few people, he found commonalities of people who had reached that age and weren't just living at 100 or older, but were really thriving, happy,
Yes.
happy, productive. And the commonalities were things that I noticed with my own grandmother, who lived to be 100, almost 101. But they were really unique characteristics that I think we should definitely embrace. But one of them was also not taking things so personally, and this is a generation that survived World War, Vietnam, World War II, the Depression, right? All of the changes that have happened. And I noticed with my own grandmother, she had the ability to let things kind of like what they say, when water on a duck's back,
Yes.
to let things go and not to hold on to anger or guilt or things like that. What about in your research? What are some things that you've discovered about people that are over 50, maybe over 70, reaching up into those ages? What are some commonalities that you've noticed?
Well, I've noticed that as what you just said, Christine, they don't take things so personally. Their self-talk is of a much more positive nature. They are much more honest and authentic. And they don't that's like taking things personally, but they don't take things so seriously. I think there's a difference between seriously and personally. Personally is about the self. Seriously is, okay, this is something that's happening and it's not all that tragic.
Even the loss of, because I was very much aware. I was very, very close to my grandmother, and I think also this is perhaps why I also have a high regard for elderly folk in our communities, and that I interact with. With what I noticed too is that even with great tragedy in her life, the loss of her own children. At an older age, they weren't children themselves. They were, my father. She lost my father, her other son. While that, of course, that tore her up, and as any mother who would lose a child would, she just had this unbelievable way of bouncing back and shining from within, like that little girl. My little girl Dorothy was able to shine through this, 90-year-old, 100-year-old body and face. And I like I said, she's a role model to me, but I think it's that ability, that resilience to bounce back.
Well, resilience comes from facing and confronting life. It's not, we don't build resilience through denial and avoidance. We've had hardships in life, which helps us build resilience. It's kind of, It's an interesting quote I read from Michaela Haas's book, um, Bouncing Forward. She says, pain is the catalyst for growth.
Wow. Yeah.
And it's true. And so, you know, having an optimistic attitude. I always go by the belief that energy follows thought. So I try to keep my thoughts of a positive, realistic, but optimistic nature in that direction. And then my energy is upbeat, and the energy I'm putting out in the world is upbeat, versus victims have negative energy and no one wants to be around them.
Right. Right. The glass is always half empty or
Always.
full of crap.
Yeah. Bitter, cynical. Yes. You know, so I think that this is an opportunity of a lifetime for women and men to grow happier, more confident, more loving, and engaged at the same time you're growing older.
Yes.
You know, because society, as you alluded to, sends the message that, oh, getting older is over the hill. It's the waiting room for the next world. And it's about decline and being disabled and irrelevant, or indulging in meaningless recreation. And that's not the vision that made me write this book. You know, they're saying that we no longer get to experience like being human and discovering and developing and expanding. And to me, there's no magical age at which we need to abandon our dreams and surrender our possibilities. And I think that's important.
Well, and there's so much that we have as women and men who are 50 and over, 50, 60, 70, 80, 100. There's so much that we offer the world through our experiences, through what we've gone through, what we've learned. And in our culture, and this is where I really want to go with this, as you mentioned, in our society, and that's America. Because it's not that way. It's not that way in other parts of the world. But,
not at all.
But in our and especially and let's not forget, of course, Native American traditions, because the Native Americans very much honored their elderly and came to them, and they were the
elders.
Yes, and children. You know, you would in certain cultures too. You would make sure that your children were raised and educated by the elders, because they had such, first of all, they weren't busy going out and doing all the stuff they needed to do, but also because of the vast amount of knowledge and experience they had. But in this culture, in this Kardashian culture that we live in, where the skinnier you are, the more money you have, all of those things are so much celebrated, and you just open up a magazine or look at television or anything in our media, you rarely see any representation of people who are over 50 in a positive light, in a vivacious, contributional way, and that's our culture.
Yes.
And we're changing it, aren't we, Dr. Andrea Brandt?
Yes, we are. Gosh darn it. I just think that, and there's all this inspiring new evidence about aging. A lot of studies done recently about neuroplasticity of the brain. So scientists once thought that our brains were set when we reached a certain age, like the age of 25, and they believed our personalities, abilities, the habits, etc., couldn't change. And now we know that that's not true. We can absolutely change our brains at any age and take on new information. And and be creative and do all kinds of things that we couldn't do before, or they thought we couldn't do before.
And I love what you just said too, because that we can, at any moment, we can change. You're as a psychotherapist, I know you're very much aware of the neural pathways. Now, when we have habits, or we have a negative, let's say we look at the world, in a certain way, those neural pathways of how we react to stress, to pressure, are pretty, dug in. But there are ways for us, right, to write a new story or.
Oh, definitely, definitely. I just think that it's important to realize that we can have a new vision and open our hearts fearlessly, excuse me, to being successful in new relationships when we lose our loved ones. How many times it happened in my family? My cousin passed away, and he was cousin by marriage, and so my real cousin was a widow, and she had these good friends, and eventually her girlfriend passed away, and she got together with the man of the girlfriend, and they've been together now for 8 or 10 years, and they both just feel lucky. But it's a connection, because so many people I hear say, "Oh, I'll never find anyone," and that's not true.
Well, I think it was. Oh, now I hate to refer back to my own grandmother, but and maybe also about your grandmother we're talking about. But
really.
My grandmother had a couple marriages, right? And none of them were very, Cinderella-ish, or nothing. Right. It was like, okay, I married him. Yeah, we had kids. But she actually reacquainted. She bumped into this man when she was probably in her late 80s. I would say late 80s, early 90s even. And this was someone that she had worked with when she was younger in Burbank. I think it was at the Burbank airport. And this was just someone who, now they had both been married. They were both married to other people, but they worked together. But they had this kind of, they both thought each other was kind of cute, but never did anything, never acted on it, right? Well, she meets him in her late 80s, early 90s, and she told me, she said, "I'm so happy. This is the love of my life." So it's never too late, because the love of your life could be right around the corner, or 20, 30 years from now, right?
Honest to God. It's so true. And as long as you're open and can be engaging, and can practice. I did a blog recently for people who are older and how to make their relationship successful after the age of 50. But I think this kind of relates, when I look at it again, it kind of relates to any age. To practice positive communication and address conflict in the spirit of love. I think that's the difference. When we're younger, we're much more reactive. But when we're older, we've made a few mistakes. We've hopefully learned from them, and now we can maybe have positive conflict. Because I've always believed that anger and conflict makes relationships stronger anyway. And if you're being mindful, you can't be reactive. So that's also helpful. And to support your partner's independence and enjoy special time together, and build a relationship with yourself. What is your vision? What is positive and realistic for you?
You mentioned in your book it's mindful aging, embracing your life after 50 to find fulfillment, purpose, and joy. You mentioned 4 surefire ways to increase happiness as you get older. Would you like to maybe share a few of those with our listeners? Yeah.
Um, if there's something you've always wanted to do, what are you waiting for? Do it now. Get to know yourself and accept your truth. And what I mean by that is you got to ask yourself, what do I want out of tomorrow? It's not about what other people want you to do. It's what you want to do. You've paid your dues. You live by other people's standards for a while. Now it's your time. Free yourself of the things that are bringing you down. You need to let go of what no longer serves you. And strive to do things that, in fact, uplift you and give you energy. And to use your longevity bonus. And what I mean by that is so many people are living longer and they're healthy. They're really healthy and feel good and have good energy. So there are many avenues people can go down to pursue what they want and what they love. And this is the time to pursue what you love. Many people in their 50s and 60s invest in career opportunities, new hobbies, not to achieve material success, but to achieve meaning. And I think that's really important for people.
Yeah. Well, on the flip side of ways to increase your happiness, which also I think keeps you young at heart as well, is the opposite too, as far as things that really are detrimental to our health and our wellness, things that age you. And when I say things, it doesn't necessarily mean physical things, but something that I've recognized and know that really ages people, and I mean detrimentally, is this idea of holding on to anger and resentment. Let's talk about the things that are detrimental to our being of having a fulfilling time and life as we age. But let's talk about the things that actually do age us in the negative aspect.
The things that age us are, as you said, Christine, holding on to anger, not letting it go, and holding on to fears. When you get to be this age, you have the fear of mortality, and you have beliefs that you have lived by that really don't work for you anymore. Look around your house. What can you get rid of? That's one thing. You can be buried under all that stuff. And that's all it is at this point in our life, is stuff. And a lot of people that I have seen is, when they need to bring more joy into their lives, and not, it's never too late to continue learning and doing new things. So they need to get the negative self-talk, which will just put you in an early grave. And people who are fearful of life, fearful of death rather, do not embrace life with gusto, urgency, or appreciation. They're too consumed with the fear of dying. So that's why I have a chapter in this book on spirituality and making a connection to the spiritual dimension of life, whatever that means to people. I don't know if that means temples, churches, or any organized religion. I myself go to a spiritual group once every 3 weeks. We're of different religious denominations, and we're there to support one another, to talk about issues in the world and in ourselves that are hurtful, things that we need to get rid of. You know, society has been consumed since the election, about the election, and the issues that have come up there. And I know I've really helped a lot of people put limits and guidelines and boundaries around how much television they watch.
Oh, I don't watch it.
Yes.
I don't watch it. And you know what? I see a difference in between my perspective and my outlook on life and others who watch it quite religiously, especially the news. And this is the thing. And we're talking about, too, life after 50. Well, a lot of the news programs, they know that they're the large audience are people that are over 50 and maybe even over 60 or 70. That's why they sell all those pharmaceuticals, all of the drugs in between. But in the news, it's everything that is depressing and sad about our society. And very rarely do they have, once in a while they'll say, oh, a puppy got saved, from a fire. But for the most part, you think your vision of the world, your perception of the world is that it's dangerous. Mm-hmm. It's something to be frightened of. And it's, literally it's painting the world as a scary, scary place.
Right.
And what does that do, Miss Psychiatrist of many years? What does that do to the psyche when you are repeatedly being fed that information?
Well, it erodes it and makes you very nervous and anxious.
Yeah.
It really does. And at a time when you feel you have no ability to make any changes in it. You're helpless. Other than what you can do in your own world. And in your own world is where the focus needs to be. Because I don't mean that you're not concerned about your friends or making new friends and tending to the ones that have been there for you for years. I totally embrace that. I find that very enriching to be around my friends. But that's where the focus, that's where you have impact. You don't have impact if you listen to the news.
Mm-hmm. Also, not just the news, I find that the energy that is emitted from television, I'm at a sensitive point that I feel I have a lot of empathic characteristics, I guess you'd say, and I cannot physically watch the television because of an energy that I feel off the television. A lot of times it's even if it's movies, or the only time I can watch it is if it's a program that is like a comedy, like Saturday Night Live or something like that. Mm-hmm. But everything else, I feel like I am being so manipulated. Even the dramas, it's like I feel like I am being manipulated to follow a story, and it's going to end tragically or something. It's just to get your attention.
But one of the things when you say not watching Saturday Night Live, you said, well, to me, that really is helpful because that brings joy into our lives.
Yes. Yeah. It's a release valve. Yes.
Yeah, it is. And we need a release valve. We need to have joy. We need to think of what I have an exercise in the book that says, what did in your teens, in your 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, what did you do that brought you joy? And how much of your day do you devote to it now? And where does it rank? Is it, 1 through 10? Is it a 5? Is it a 6? Is it a 7? Is it a 10? And I really suggest that people make a list and write down the things that bring them joy. And if it's below a 7, I want 7 and above. 7 and below, you could probably do better for yourself.
Yeah, yeah. Let's talk about it's another aspect that you talk about in the book are the fundamentals for a healthy, happy post middle age, and I think one of the first ones, which would be relationships. I think it kind of plays back on what you were talking about, being free from the fear of, being free from fear of dying, but also being free from the fear of being hurt. So many of us walk around this planet, with a great deal of hurt in their hearts. And
Right.
from childhood trauma or abuse or being abandoned or neglected, if not physical abuse, then maybe mental abuse or things like that. And we protect our heart by sometimes being cold, by
Yes.
being bitter, by our outlook at life is something that we need to protect our heart from. So let's talk about some of those things that we can, the fundamentals to be happy and healthy. But let's focus in on relationships and and working on that ability to have that open heart and not closed off to the world.
Yeah, and also being more authentic, as I said earlier. The first thing you need to do is allow yourself to feel your feelings, and don't hide from feelings of anger or bury sadness. The degree to which you are in touch with your emotions is the degree to which you will be authentic to yourself and to other people, and live life more fully. Focus on what you would love. And you can't get there unless you feel the whole rainbow of emotions. And think about what life you would love and what it would look like. Mm-hmm. And as I said a moment ago, explore your spiritual side, because this helps us as we get older. Spirituality means different things to different people, and however you want to define it is up to you, but maybe that's God, or maybe that's simply the knowledge that astrophysicist Carl Sagan, the nitrogen in our DNA, the calcium in our teeth, the iron in our blood, and the carbon in our apple pies were made in the interiors of collapsing stars. We are made of star stuff. You are connected to everyone. And that's what you get from the sense of spirituality. You don't have to go to a religious edifice in order to get that sense of being connected to everyone. Or perhaps you do. I don't know. Everybody's different. But I do think spirituality is important. And we need to strengthen our relationships and because they become more important as we age. We no longer necessarily have a workplace to go to. Some people do. Children no longer need us in the same way to be involved in their daily lives. And it's easy to slip into solitude and isolation. And those are the worst things you could do. One has to make an effort to be social. Even the most introverted of us need to spend time with others to stay mentally healthy. Human beings are social creatures, and it's how our species has survived for thousands of years. We lean on each other. And to keep our relationships strong, we need to make an effort to see our friends often and keep dates once we make them. Be reliable, don't flake. Mm-hmm. And take care of your body. Live up to the full potential your body needs to be as healthy as it can be. The fuel you need to tap into your authentic self, strengthen relationships, and explore your spirituality is a healthy diet and exercise. That's the fuel you need. And when you don't take care of yourself physically, you won't have the energy to do the other things. Not only do people eat healthy and stay physically active, live longer, but studies show that they're emotionally healthier too. So living a more meaningful life as you age doesn't require any huge lifestyle changes. It just means creating a life, creating a vision, and then developing it into a life that you love, one that is true to you, not somebody else, but to you, one that is healthy and, excuse me, rich with connections to others.
That sounds like very, very sage advice for everyone. It doesn't matter what age you are.
Yeah, no. I know it's a tall order to take in, in like 40 minutes, but it's, if you get half of that, you'll be in a better place as you get older.
One thing that I know that's assisted me greatly, and I didn't realize the power of it until I really focused in on it, is, and I think it was, who was it? Now I'm trying to remember the gentleman's name. The idea that your body listens to you. That when you speak to your body, and I'm not just saying speaking out loud, but we talk about our bodies. We tell people, we go, oh, I'm old, or oh my God, look how old I look, or look how, when you wake up in the morning, how we speak to our bodies. But also when we have maybe a little health scare, there's a little something that's happening in your body, and some people go right to that. Well, it's cancer. I'm going to die. And then other people say, "Oh, what is this?" Okay. Initially, you go to the fear place because that's a fight or flight kind of
it's
thing.
It's the trauma response,
right? But I've found that when I speak to my body, not only kindly, but I tell it all kinds of things. I try to tell it all kinds of things that help it heal. And keep it vital and young, and that is extremely powerful because the science is as you know, the science is that your body, your beliefs impact your body. Your health is a direct reflection of also your thoughts, your beliefs.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and people don't realize this, do they? They think it's just genetic or anything like that, but a great deal is what we tell ourselves.
It's what we tell ourselves. Albert Ellis many years ago came up with the equation of A, activating event, plus B, belief, equals C, consequence. And he was brilliant, and he was right, because it isn't just a stressor and a response that people speak. It's what goes on between the stressor and the response, which is the belief. And so you have to listen to what you tell yourself. And we learned to make up stories, Christine, when we were really young and little, when mom or dad looked at us with a frown on their face, and we said, Mommy, Daddy was wrong, and they said nothing. Well, by not telling us, that put us in a position, because little kids need answers.
Yes, we do. That's why we say, why?
Yeah, exactly. How many whys did you hear during the day? But the point is that we will make up stories. And those stories are usually have us, because we're so egomaniacal at that young age, usually has us in the middle of the story, and not always in a flattering way. So that's how we sometimes come to beliefs. When we make them up, they're usually about us, and they're usually limiting.
Oh, you just tapped into something so strong, and this is what I think plagues humanity in general, is this idea of the stories that we make up. And usually they paint us ourselves in a bad light. We're not deserving of love. We're not deserving of success.
Right.
There's a fear of success. There's a fear of love, even though it's something that maybe you really want. You yearn for it, but there is this story in the back of our head saying, well, I don't deserve it, or I'm not worthy of having a beautiful, happy relationship or a successful career.
Right. And it's so important. Those are part of the things that we need to get rid of that don't serve us anymore. Whether we speak to our friends or we go to a therapist, people really need to delve into those beliefs that run their lives that no longer are applicable. They're erroneous core beliefs, and we need a new message.
Well, especially since like attracts like, and energy attracts energy. So if you're saying to yourself all day long, I'm not worthy of love, I'm fat, I'm never gonna. Everybody else is successful and has money, but that'll never happen to me. All those beliefs, after a while, it's what is that thing? The saying, if you ask for it long enough, guess what? You're going to get it.
Yes.
Because that's what you're sending out to the universe. That's the energy that you're sending out, right?
Right. Absolutely. And it will manifest, I guarantee you.
Something that just recently popped across my my on Instagram. It popped across, and I captured it because it's so important. And I tried when I refer to this a lot, but I also I can see it in people I interact with, friends and coworkers. And this is what this says. It says, talking about our problems is our greatest addiction. Break the habit. Talk about your joys.
Yes. Talk about the things that make you feel good. That's what I mean by having upbeat energy, because then it makes you look like you are in charge of your life and you know what you want. And this is your time.
But we're so addicted to talking about our problems, doctor. You're paid for. People come and talk to you about their problems all the time.
Yeah, but Christine, I'll tell you something interesting. Many years ago, because I've been a therapist over 35 years, it was all about pathology. You damn well better have problems to come in so I can fix you. But therapy has evolved too. And now it's about resources and healing. So, yes, people still have traumas they're dealing with and problems they're dealing with. But we as therapists are approaching them in ways that take into account the person's resources, even the maladaptive ones. We can add to those. Maladaptive, like if someone can only be why can't I think of the word? Oh God. Cave. They can only cave. They don't know how to stand up for themselves. Well, sometimes I don't want to take away cave. I don't want to take away fold in on yourself. Be compliant. That's the word I was looking for. That I don't want to take away compliance, because sometimes you need to be compliant, but I want to help them learn how to set boundaries. I want to help them have a voice, their voice. That's very important. So we approach therapy from a very different point of view. It's very relational. And it's a much more transforming way of dealing with people.
One of the areas of your expertise is helping treat anger management,
Right.
And I think this is obviously something that we see in our culture that needs some attention. There's a lot of angry people walking around. I always look at it when I see someone who's very angry. I look at a hurt person. I know that it comes from fear.
In fear,
Yeah. So, if you don't mind, just if you could maybe let our listeners know people who are dealing with anger issues, and if they're aware of it or not, but they tuned into the show, so there's a reason why they're listening. So,
sure.
Some, if you don't mind, maybe some not, it's not tips, but some advice on dealing with our anger.
Well, firstly, you're not a bad person. Anger is a normal, healthy emotion, and you're not going to get through this life without being angry. So when people come to me, I'm not taking away their anger. I'm showing them how to deal with it in a healthy and productive way. And I think that people confuse impulse with anger. They're not the same thing. This is the cycle that I want to leave you with, because I think this is important for people listening. We have triggers. Somebody triggers us. We have clues in our minds. We think about it, or maybe we begin to ruminate in our bodies and our emotions, and physically, maybe our fists clench or we start to pace. So triggers, clues. Then we have an impulse, Christine, that starts from our feet, comes all the way up our body. It's a physical, somatic feeling. And before it hits our, limbic system, our reptilian brain, we need to grab it, because if we don't, it's going to roll over into anger, and then that's going to roll over into a behavior you're going to be unhappy with. So that's the series and how it goes. Anger always follows impulse. And so I really think that anger management is a misnomer. I think it should be called impulse management.
Oh, I love that. Yeah. Because we
the
go to
impulse that gets us in trouble.
Yeah, and we go down that spiral. What I find when I get triggered, and what happens is there's these base fears, right? And it can be whatever. It can be realistic or not. It doesn't matter. They're base fears, maybe based on some past life or early trauma. And what happens is that something will trigger, or a person will trigger that fear.
Yeah.
And usually it's, if it's abandonment or whatever that has been an impact in your life. When that trigger happens, now I can do it. Now I'm better at it. But I used to not be, but now I'm better at it. I can feel myself spiral. In other words, all these thoughts come into my head, all of the what ifs and negatives, and you're looking for clue. You're like, well, to justify your feeling, you're like, well, see, I knew that was what was really going on because of the way that they said this, or you look for ways to back up your story, your evidence, right? And then you spiral into this, oh my gosh, you just go down the drain. I equate it to like water, when you let go of the water out of a bathtub and it spirals down the drain, that's where you go. And the key is stopping what I've done, what helps me is that when I start to feel myself do that, I'll use expletives, and this is a podcast, so we can say it. But I'll say, Christine, shut the fuck up. Shut the fuck up. Because when you have that trigger, all of a sudden this flood of negative stuff comes in. Like, it's like all day long I hadn't been thinking one negative thought, and then something triggers, and then boom. Right?
And you've heard people say 1,000 times, I don't know what happened, Christina. It was just so fast, and I blew.
Yes.
And that's how fast it is.
And usually when they're blowing at somebody or something, it has nothing to do with that person. Somebody cuts you off. Somebody's cut off in a freeway, and somebody goes AWOL, goes nuts over it. It's not the fact that they were cut off by that person. It's because earlier in the day or 10 years ago, somebody hurt them,
Exactly.
We what do we do? Is it misplaced anger onto?
Yes. And it's like the 90-10 phenomenon. 10% is the present day trigger, and the reaction is like a 90% tsunami that floods you, that comes from history. And most of the work in therapy, especially with trauma people, is separating the 10% you really find in your life today from the 90% for which you don't have to go back to.
Oh, and I'm going to tell you, that's where the majority of people are living their lives, in the past.
Yes.
They're not conscious of it.
No. It's like, be here now.
And what are some helpful reminders that we can do to remind ourselves, be here now? Put like a rubber band around our wrist and snap it.
Yeah. Do you know, I once stood in line at the Bank of America many, many years ago when they had tellers. And there was a woman in front of me, and she had something on her wrist, and I thought she was an Auschwitz survivor, because it looked to me, with my bad eyesight, like numbers. And I got up close, and when she put her hand out, and it said, be here now. It was a tattoo that reminded her to be in the moment. So we need to put it on Post-its, hang it on our vanities, put it on the passenger side of our car, in our wallets, places we go to often. We need to practice mindfulness. It's being in the moment by moment, following what we're feeling, thinking, sensing, in a non-judgmental way. And that's the key, non-judgmental.
Wow. I will have a collection of different watches, and I don't wear them all that often, but when you're going out, you want to have it's an accessory. It's like jewelry to me.
Sure.
But one of my watches, it's a band, and there is no actual time on it. All it says is now.
Right.
And I wear that when I need to be centered and focused and not tripping out about tomorrow or 5 years from now, or the past, what happened yesterday, when I really just need to focus in on this moment. And I consciously wear that non-watch,
Right.
And I love it when people, because they see it on my left wrist, and they'll say, "Oh, what time is it? Can you tell me the time?" And I'll just go, "Now."
Right. Well, I need to give you my website before we end.
Yes, please do. Please want our listeners to know how to find you.
If people want more details about mindful aging, they can go to agewithpurpose.com. And if they want me, they go to, I don't even know my own website. Jesus.
We'll find it.
Mindfulanger.com, I think, or just abrandttherapy.com. That's what it is.
abrandttherapy.com, and that's
yeah.
Brandt is BRANDT therapy.com.
Yeah.
And for more information on aging, on mindful aging, and her book, you can go to agewithpurpose.com. I love that. That's a great website. agewithpurpose.com. And
yes.
And of course, people can get your book on Amazon. Yes.
Yes, absolutely. Beginning April 10th, or they can pre-order now.
Well, we're so way ahead of the curve here on Out of the Box Radio. I really want people to contact you and find out more about what you do. Now, you're based in Santa Monica, but do you also, obviously, you talk to people on the phone and Skype?
On phone and Skype, on everything.
Don't you love technology? It's so helpful.
Sometimes.
Yeah. Well, I want to thank you so very much for being with us this hour, and I would love to have you back.
I would love to come back. You were a delight and a great interviewer.
Oh, thank you. My grandmother taught me well, because she would ask me a lot of questions growing up.
Well, she lived a long time. You had a lot of practice.
Yes. But definitely, please do come back, and we'll talk more. Maybe we'll talk when the book actually comes out as well, and we can talk about any other subject that you have and you feel that you want to get out to people. Please do let me know. I would love to have you back, and I know our listeners would love to have you back as well.
Well, I love your show, so I definitely call you back.
Wonderful. Folks, run out and get this book. It's Mindful Aging, Embracing Your Life After 50 to Find Fulfillment, Purpose, and Joy. My guest this hour has been Santa Monica-based psychotherapist Dr. Andrea Brandt. And we want this show is going to be actually on YouTube, and people can actually very easily share it. And I encourage you to do that in social media and emails and all of that stuff. So please do that. I want to thank everybody for listening this hour. Remember, you can tune in next week for another Out of the Box Radio, as well as you can subscribe to this program, this podcast on iTunes, iHeartRadio, and of course, YouTube. And until next week, I want to remind you to always, always think outside of the box. Bye for now.